It's the Final Word Daily with Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City and me, Daniel Norcross. And I am absolutely delighted to say that in a room just down the corridor in our hotel in Media City, it is my colleague on Test Match Special, buglist, satirist, and cricket fanatic, Andy Zaltzman. And what we do at the start of every episode of the Final Word Daily is I ask, well, sometimes I'm asked, but I'm asking this time, Andy Zaltzman to describe today's play in 30 seconds.
Well, we started the day, Dan, with a range of scenarios. Could Chandimal and Kamindu Mendis bat for a hugely long time and turn the game in Sri Lanka's favour, or would Sri Lanka collapse in a heap and their weak tail exposed to allow England to romp to an easy victory? And what we had was pretty much dead in between those two things. Chandimal and Kamindu batted tremendously well, but not for quite long enough. Kamindu out for 113, dismissed by Atkinson, and that proved to be where the game decisively turned in England's favour, really. Although Sri Lanka's bowlers put up a decent show without ever really looking like they were going to win, England winning by 5 wickets. What is it, after 7:15 or something, something like that, late-ish. Joe Root reaching 50, having hit only 1 4. It took him 95 balls to hit a 4, which is the longest it's taken an England batsman to hit a 4 in a Test innings since Root himself at Sydney in 2018. Was that about 30 seconds?
No, nothing like it. But yeah, I mean, that is pretty much what did happen today. It's fair to say. But we're going to get into the weeds and the details because this was always likely to happen, it seems to me, Andy. 20 overs were before there was a second new ball was going to become available. The pitch was unbelievably slow. It seemed to get so easy to bat. As long as those two, Kamindu Mendis and Chandimal, could get in, then there was almost like no way they were going to get out until the new ball happened. And that, those 20 overs were just, I wouldn't say turgid, just really well played by Sri Lanka. I mean, give us a flavour of Kamindu Mendis' innings, because it was so sort of silken and smooth and enjoyable and left-handery. I mean, it was at that point, you just did wonder whether Sri Lanka could bat through most of the day.
Well, Kamindu Mendis has come to England having made this great start to his Test career. 2 centuries against Bangladesh, made a 60 on debut against Australia a couple of years ago, 2 centuries and then a 90 not out against Bangladesh. Huge first-class numbers. And quite often when players come here with having made a prodigious start, it's quite hard for them to carry it on. They end up being a little bit disappointing and their career sort of flattens out to something less spectacular than they promised. In the first innings, Kamindu looked really, really good for 24 balls and then was out to his 25th. So it was a bit hard to tell from that, but he looked kind of neat and dapper. And in the second innings, he played with, glorious style. He was very precise. His timing was exceptional. He hit 15 fours and a 6 in a match where boundaries were really hard to score. And he got over half of his runs in fours, which in a match in which we saw more threes, Dan, than we've seen in any Test in England since 2015, testament to the slowness of the outfield. The fact that he was peppering the ropes more than anyone else in the game, I think, showed what a fantastic talent he is. And it must be one of the best number 7s that we've seen in Test cricket in recent years. So you'd expect him to move up the batting order over the years. But it was great. It's always great to see when you see a new player who you've sort of not seen in the flesh or not seen much of on television, and they live up to expectations and they have a bit of style about them. Quite a sort of classical left-handery style. It was great to watch.
It was. He, in partnership with Chandimal, put on 117, took Sri Lanka to 307 for 7. And at this stage, I mean, it was one of the highlights of my day, really, was watching colleagues in conniptions, pacing back and forth, everyone terrified, trying to work out scenario build, going, oh my God, there's got to be a wicket soon or else we're going to be here for another day. And then the forecast tomorrow is rain, so it wasn't just another day, it could have been nearly all of tomorrow. And then, as if by magic, what we feared could happen, did happen. The 7th wicket fell. It was Kamindu Mendis himself. I think it was a decent ball, actually. He got in a couple of minds about it, didn't he? Just played at it when he didn't want to. And since he'd been in such a zone, I think it just did a little bit. Got a little edge through. That was a breakthrough. That was 307 for 7. And that precipitated a collapse of 4 for 19 in no time. It was like 4.1, 4.2 overs. Absolutely nuts. But that doesn't really tell all the story of it, because you've got Chandimal at the other end, and he actually batted with such solidity. He just looked fine, unruffled, nothing, no, not a problem, not a care in the world. Out walks Prabhat Jayasuriya, whom we are told can bat. I mean, for heaven's sake, he batted ahead of Ratnayaka in the first innings. And Ratnayaka could bat, albeit that he also got out to one of the most cluelessly brainless shots anyone has ever played by trying to tonk route downtown immediately upon seeing him. But that was yesterday's news. Today's news of culpable homicide is Prabhat Jayasuriya, who, for reasons known only to him, and a man who's played an awful lot of cricket, decided that with Chandimal at the other end going well, that lead now eking up to around 200, thinking to themselves, 250, 260, that could be seriously problematic. If I could stay with Chandimal, perhaps, and, add 30 or 40, we know that Vishwa Fernando can hang around a bit. He's done it before. I think he did it with Kusal Mendes. Is that right? That incredible game.
Kusal Pereira, it was. Yeah.
Kusal Pereira, sorry, in that incredible game in South Africa in 2019. Instead, he played a shot of such... I mean, it was Shannon Gabriel-esque levels of unbelievable. Why did he do that? Why did he... I put the question to you, Andy. Why did he do that?
Dan, I think we could be discussing this for many days, weeks, months even. I don't think we'd reach a satisfactory answer to that. Not only that, but if you think back to one of Sri Lanka's most famous victories, that Headingley game in 2014 when Angelo Matthews played so brilliantly. I think Chandimal was in that side as well. Then the tail end stuck around with Matthews. Herath got 40 odd. I think Eranga might have batted for a while. So they have this precedent, aside from it just being basic common sense, of if you're shit at batting, don't bat shitly if you can possibly help it. When you have a good player at the other end, and Chandimal was, as you say, playing really well, and he's a long-term class player, averaging in the mid-40s in tests. So that was a really dim shot, and I think Sri Lanka's chances of victory were always, once that partnership was broken, you think, that's their chances of getting a 350 ahead, which they could have done, with a 250 partnership. That had gone, so then they just need to get as many as possible. So to lose those last 3 wickets after Mendes was out in no time, with that terrible shot by Jayasuriya. Vishwa Fernando got out to a decent straight ball, a tail ender getting out LBW to a decent ball. That's fair enough. And then Chandimal had a slightly inexplicable hoof himself when I think you could have just tried to milk it a little bit longer. But that sort of turned the game, left England with really a chase that they would have had to try something really exceptional to lose from on that pitch, 200 odd. So I don't know. I can't explain it, Dan. I don't know if Prabhat Jayasuriya can explain it. I don't know if he'd taken some psychotropic substance that made him think that he was Aravinda de Silva coming out in the World Cup semi-final in 1996 after 2 wickets had fallen in the first over and playing like a genius. I don't know. We just don't know.
No.
We've not heard from Prabhat.
We don't know.
He's not coming on the show, is he?
No, I hope not.
It'd be nice to ask hm.
I mean, I should tell you what the shot was. It was a wild drive to a wide-ish ball outside the off stump that took a thick edge, and that was him done. It was utterly ridiculous.
Just quickly on Kamindu Mendes, he 553 runs, I think he has, after 7 innings in tests, which puts him 6th on the all-time list of most runs after 7 innings of a test career, which is pretty high up. We've seen some very good start. 3 of the players in this game. Harry Brook is above him. He scored 569. He's in 4th place. Gavaskar in 5th. Javed Miandad 3rd. Conrad Hunt 2nd. West Indies player in the 50s and 60s. And Vinod Kambli, who had one of Test cricket's more curious careers. He had 673 runs after just 7 Test innings. Or those were over 6 games rather than the 4 that Kamindu's played.
Another tasty left-hander, of course. So that was it. 326 all out. 3 wickets for Wokes, 3 wickets for Potts, a couple for Atkinson, which allows us... We're going to do some stat attackage later, but why don't we just briefly pause to dwell on Gus Atkinson's stat attack with those 2 wickets, Andy?
Yes, because I think it was probably his worst innings for England yet, albeit he did take the crucial wicket and ended up with 2 for 89. So he's played 4 tests, He's taken at least 2 wickets in all 8 innings, and he's only the 3rd England player in Test history, in men's Test. I didn't have a chance to look at if any women players have done it, but the 3rd male English player in Test history to begin his career taking at least 2 wickets in his first 8 Test innings. And the most recent to it, Ken Higgs, who extraordinarily started with 15 consecutive 2 wicket innings, 2 or more wickets in an innings. Played for England quite briefly in the 60s. He played about 15 tests in the end, I think.
But he did appear in the famous 10th wicket partnership, didn't he? Was it with Ray Ellingworth that lasted for a while?
I think it was John Snow, wasn't it? Was it Snow?
Was it John Snow? Well, it might have been John Snow. It was about 118 or something like that. It was a lot. And of course, what we all remember about Ken Higgs is he had a truly spectacular arse.
Yeah, huge arse.
Huge arse, yeah.
Enormous, proper fast bowler's arse, which I don't think the world really appreciates these days.
Well, let's move on. Sorry.
Ken Higgs and Maurice Tate, 1920s superstar, the crafty Sussex medium pacer. I think Atkinson, I can't remember, was 13th or 14th player from any country to do it. The most recent was Ajantha Mendis of Sri Lanka, late in the first decade of this century. And the last seam bowler to begin with 8 consecutive innings with 2 or more Test wickets was Brett Lee, who made his debut in the Boxing Day Test of 1999. So, yeah, a rare achievement for Atkinson. I thought he bowled really well in the first innings, less well in the second. But, yeah, I mean, I think the range of skills he's shown bodes very well for a long and productive career, hopefully.
I can also say what a rare thing it is on the final word daily for us to be bombarded with facts, not feelings. It's not feelings today. It's all about the facts, and I'm up for that. I think there should be more of this sort of thing, I say. So, 326 all out. That sets England 205. I think everybody knows that at this stage it's going to be highly unlikely that England are going to lose. Not because 205 isn't a tricky chase, but because actually, if you were there, if you were watching it and you saw how the pitch behaved, you kind of knew. It was a little bit like that feeling in 2022, wasn't it? Where if the first 30 overs, 35 overs, you could take 4 or 5 wickets, and thereafter the ball would become soft. And the interaction of ball and surface was a very unhappy interaction after a certain amount of time. So it was always going to be tricky unless you made those plentiful breakthroughs early on that could then create and induce the panic. The glimmer of hope for Sri Lanka was, of course, that England have come in with a slightly lengthened tail. Wokes is a brilliant 8, but not quite a 7. He's like a sort of 7.42. Potts is probably a brilliant 9, but and he is 9. I got my numbers the wrong way around. Atkinson is probably a decent 9, but he's not an 8, if you get my drift.
Yes.
So all the way down, it's just not quite right. It's been a little bit flimsy. So England needed not to let Sri Lanka barge through the door. And for the most part, they did do that, albeit that we got this... well, I suppose I'll pause briefly for the wonder catch that wasn't. The Kusal Mendis wonder catch off Ben Duckett, which didn't actually cost any runs, but it was, for me, one of the greatest catches I've ever seen that wasn't. And it was Mitchell Stark-esque, wasn't it, in that the reason why it was disallowed, because it's unbelievable. It's almost like a deliberate leg glance from Duckett. He was trying to get it fine, and he was almost trying to get it that fine. He just wasn't trying to get it quite that fine. And Kusal Mendis unbelievably dives to his right. And bear in mind, he is standing wicketkeeper because Chandimal has got a sore finger. Dives, takes a spectacular catch, but his hand just turns round and the ball scrapes along the floor, and then he turns the hand back up and claims the catch, and Duckett's walked off, and then we're looking, and the disappointment of it. Never mind, it is what it is. It would have been a brilliant catch. As it was, he saved 4 runs rather brilliantly. Soon after, Ben Duckett gets out. That's not quite enough for us to get really excited. Relatively soon after that, Ollie Pope gets out playing not a good shot. A sort of reverse paddle, toe end, easiest catch you'll ever see, gets caught, backward point. Suddenly, 2 down, things are getting a little bit spicy. All the while, Dan Lawrence is playing the most Dan Lawrence innings you can imagine, which he always does, really. I mean, all you've got to do is imagine Dan Lawrence playing cricket, and he did it again, which is the leg side is his friend, and the offside is some place of dark, evil mystery. No one must go there. It's foul. It's out of bounds. Out of bounds. In the process of doing this, plays an extraordinary shot that will live in the memory, and no one quite knows how he pulled it off, but he did. But then he gets out. Brooke comes in. Decent partnership. You think the ship is steadied, but all the while things are going a little bit more slowly. Bazball has gone out of the window. Andy, what were we witnessing at this point? Was this just conditions? Was it circumstance? Was it that Ben Stokes wasn't captain, but he was very much there, casting his beady ginger eye over all proceedings? Yet England suddenly played, and Root played, and Brooke. I mean, you all know the numbers better than me, but Brooke was a very slow Brooke. He was not a babbling brook. He was a tiny, gentle stream.
He was, and he played with quite a lot of restraint in both innings. 56 in the first innings, only 73 balls, but only 4 fours. And the second innings, 32 off 68 with 3 fours. And it was a hard ground on which to hit boundaries, but played with a lot of restraint in both. It was quite surprising in both innings when he was out, because his defence looked rock solid. They didn't look. There's times in the past where England would have been 3 down, needing still another 135 to win, where you might have got the sense that there was an element of concern, panic, but
peril.
Yeah, peril. I mean, admit it's not the greatest bowling attack they were facing, and like you said, it was a fairly benign pitch. But there was so much more restrained. There was, I don't know, had they been, say, 70 for 1 after 15 rather than 70 for 3, if they'd have then teed off. But they were pretty restrained all the way through. Part of that, I guess, is Lawrence's, he's a positive player, but he's not comfortable in that role yet in the side. It's his, he's got this brief chance to try and prove that he's, good enough in Test cricket in the unfamiliar position of opening. And just quickly on him, I mean, he didn't have a great game, but he got 30 and 34 in a match in which no other top 3 player reached 30 in any of the innings. And say it was a new ball pitch. So actually, he's done quite a valuable job for England in the context of this game. We tend to underrate the useful 30 from openers, I think. So I think he did pretty well.
Impact opener like Zach Crawley.
Well, yes. I mean, and Crawley. It was always said about Crawley, wasn't it, that he's never going to be consistent, but he's going to play occasional match-winning innings. And actually, over the last year, well, since the start of last summer, he's been completely consistent and hasn't really played that many match-winning innings, but he's just got consistent runs really effectively, which is. But that reputation, as we know in sport, reputations stick for decades, centuries even. So he's going to have that reputation for the rest of his career, whatever he does. Pope was a bit of a concern for me. We've seen quite often through Pope's career that there's times when he puts a run of scores together and then it disappears quite quickly. And that's happened again this summer. It happened in India, obviously, that brilliant innings in the first test, and then not much for the rest of the series. Started the summer really well. He's now 3 low scores in a row, 2 pretty tame dismissals, I thought, in this game. And we looked at his stats for failure rate in the first 25 balls of innings, and he's right up there or down there with the most vulnerable starters England have ever had in the top order of players who played a decent number of tests. So that was a concern. Root. The stats on Root since he was out to the reverse scoop of Bumrah in the 3rd test in India. Since then, he's scored at basically the exact scoring rate he had pre-Bazball. Up to the Bumrah shot, his scoring rate had gone up from about 56, 57 to 73, and then it's come back down to mid-50s since then. So he's basically just been playing in the way that he always played, and has been very effective with it. Today, 1 for took him 95 balls, as I said, to get his first 4, and his second 4 was the last shot of the match. But rock solid defence. And then, Jamie Smith came in. You've been watching Jamie Smith since he was, 17, 18 in the Surrey team. My first encounter with Jamie Smith was when he was 12th man in a T20 match at the Oval, and I took my son along a few years ago now, and my son, he was like collecting autographs, so I went along with his autograph book. And Jamie Smith was 12th man, so he was going up and down the steps at the Oval Pavilion. We had seats in front of the dressing rooms, And my son got Jamie Smith's autograph 3 times in 10 minutes.
Ooh.
Because he basically just, everyone who walked past, he held his
It's
little
got to
book
be a
out.
record.
And the third time, I could see Jamie Smith looking at him saying, "Come on, kid, come on, put some effort in here." I'm going
to move it along. Because Time's Winged Chariot is doing what it does. Suffice to say that the inevitable happened. Jamie Smith's partnership with Joe Root, which was very, very slow to start with, which caused so many conniptions. It caused some colleagues downstairs to realise that their 8:02 train was in terrible, terrible peril. There were marriages that were coming to an end before our very eyes. There were all sorts of things going on. But mercifully, Jamie Smith suddenly burst out of his cocoon, thrashed a couple of 4s, a magnificent 6, way out into deep mid-wicket. It was a long old way at Old Trafford. And the game was up. Joe Root ended up unbeaten in the process. I'm going to steal your stat, Zaltz. 4 50-plus scores in chases has only been done in successful run chases. 4 50-plus scores, not out, has only been done by Langer, Hayden, Ponting, Smith, and Kane Williamson. Now, Joe Root. He keeps that average above 50. He's advancing inexorably towards Alistair Cook and then beyond, to Cook and beyond, all the way to Tendulkar. England win the test. They won it by 5 wickets. Just another quick stat for you. Jamie Smith came close to getting 150 after keeping, which is another one of Zaltz's stats. 150 after having kept wicket, only been done by Sarfraz Ahmed twice, Matt Pryor once, and Andy Flower, of course, 3 times. The most gritty, just cussed man who has ever walked the face of the cricket.
Just to clarify that, so that's a keeper getting a century, or 2 50-plus scores, including at least 1 century. In fact, Flower had 2 centuries in one of those games, having fielded first. So it's something we've looked at a lot with England keepers, Bairstow, Butler. Neither of them, in matches they started as wicketkeeper, scored a century having kept wicket. Bairstow got a 99 not out last year, so there's a slightly manipulated stat. But Smith has got a lot of runs already having kept wickets, so innings 2, 3 and 4 of tests. 357 runs from 6 innings is the most any test wicketkeeper in men's test cricket has ever had after 6 innings of their career.
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it, Wally Grout. Bert Oldfield, Junior Murray. Yeah, where are you now, Junior Murray? Right. England won. They won by 5 wickets. They take a 1-0 lead. It's time for the Hall of Fame. Now, do you remember the first time you heard about guerrilla warfare? Was your mind filled with visions of giant apes swinging from tree to tree with machine guns and Rambo-style bandanas? Well, if this is the first time you've heard of laser eye surgery, prepare to be similarly disappointed by reality. Sadly, you won't be able to fire beams of pure energy from your eyes like Cyclops, but laser eye surgery from Betterview will help you see better, and perhaps ditch those glasses like a nerdy high school girl in the 3rd act of a coming-of-age film for the 1980s. Book your free 30-minute consultation with Betterview, now open at Westfield, London. Today, do it today, I tell you, and find out how they can help you experience the world around you with a whole new level of clarity. Westfield, London. Here's looking at you more clearly than before, kid. Yep, I could probably deal with that. I'm blind as a bat, but I'm also terrified of those sorts of things. Anyway, it's the Hall of Fame. This is where we end the show. It's the moment for you, Zaltz, that was just a bit quirky, just a bit different. That was just a bit Hall of Famey. Hadn't thought about that, had you?
No, I hadn't thought about that.
I meant to tell you to think about that. Yeah, I know. I messed up again. And today was one of those days where almost nothing happened.
Yes,
but in a brilliant kind of way. So it's quite difficult to remember. That's why I'm talking to give you time.
Pick out one moment when just after Harry Brook had come in, he smacked a ball behind square on the leg side off Jayasuriya, and Ramesh Mendis, sub fielder, almost pulled off what looked like it would have been one of the greatest catches of all time. That ball was seriously travelling. He reacted incredibly quickly, full length dive, and then on the replay, he'd actually gone past the ball. It sort of hit him on the bottom of the wrist, so he reacted too well and missed it. I mean, it would have been, it was a 1 in 100 catch, but had he taken it, then that would have made England, would there have been 4 down, about 80 on the board. then Smith under a little bit more pressure. Although he does look, so far he's looked impervious, even thrived on pressure. So impressively for such a young, a new player in Test cricket. But so I'll go for that. My Hall of Fame, one of my Hall of Fame dropped catches to go alongside the catch that wasn't you described earlier on.
I mean, really, my Hall of Fame was everything that happened away from the cricket, which no one would see, which is a whole bunch of journalists getting really, really angry about Bazball taking ages to finish off a game because everyone was trying to avoid the last train back from London, which has football fans in it, going to watch Manchester City play Ipswich. But I suppose, I don't know, today was a day of non-Hall of Famey cricket, really, wasn't it? There wasn't the actual stuff on the field of play, didn't have frivolity. It was dour, it was serious, and perhaps in a way, that is my Hall of Fame. It is that it rained in Harry Brook. It rained in Joe Root and even to a degree, or not Ben Duckett. Wait a minute, Ben Duckett was not reined in. He just played at everything like he always does. Maybe that's my Hall of Fame moment. It's so while everybody else was doing their absolute best to play the match situation, Ben Duckett was still just fencing at wide balls, getting the bat on it and picking up a single. There you go.
Can I just chuck it up? I guess one of the joys of this game is we've seen, I think, two really fantastic talents emerging further after making promising starts in Smith and Kamindu Mendis. And I guess that's one of the joys of being a sports fan, is when you see new players emerging, and to see two players at that stage of their career play so incredibly well. That was an absolute delight.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take that. That's it. It's time for us to wrap up. This has been the Final Word Daily, and it is the final Word Daily from Old Trafford. All Final Word Dailies for the remainder of this season, certainly in Test cricket, are going to take place in London, where it's warmer and nearer where we live. And that's something that we appreciate. Very much look forward to it. It won't be me at Lord's. It might yet be Zaltz, but I don't know who it's going to be at Lord's. It might be me back at the Oval. England have a 1-0 lead. I don't know whether series really matter or that we care about those sorts of things anymore. What we really cared about was having a test match that we could get our teeth into. And Sri Lanka gave us a test match we could get our teeth into. That's us from the Final Word Daily, with thanks to Westfield, London, and Westfield, Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary.